the Son of the living God, when you say those words, it came from God the Father himself. And on that, I'm going to build my church. Before I get into the details of what building his church means, I want to just walk you through a little bit about this word itself. Jesus says, I will build my church. And the Greek word there for church is the word ekklesia. It's a cool word, and you might hear it thrown around in Christian circles sometimes, but on your note sheet there I printed with the way it actually looks in Greek in the parentheses there. That's the way it actually looks in Greek, and then I also spelled it using English letters. But I'm going to give you a definition for ekklesia. Ekklesia in original Greek meant this: an assembly composed of those who meet specific criteria. An assembly composed of those who meet specific criteria. The original use of the word ekklesia was for the citizens of a city when they gathered together to vote on things. They were called, when they gathered, they were called the assembly, the ekklesia. So whenever a group of people who have a specific identity, those who are citizens, not those who are not citizens, but those who have a specific identity, gather together, that's the Greek word ekklesia. So when Jesus says, I'm going to build my church, he's saying, I'm going to create a group of people who have a specific identity, and they're going to get together. They're going to gather together, and then together they're going to accomplish something. The best modern English translation for ekklesia probably isn't the word church, because church carries a lot of baggage over the centuries. And so people have this idea of church as being, okay, well, there's the Roman Catholic Church, and there's the Presbyterian Church, and there's Evangelical Covenant Church, there's Lafayette Community Church. Okay, so what is church? What does that really mean? We don't have an idea of that. But there is something in our country that does have this meaning almost perfectly well, and it goes like this: Congress. It's an assembly of people who have specific identity. They have met a specific criteria, and they're gathering together for a specific purpose. The Congress, or we might call the House of Representatives. Think of the House of Representatives as sort of the English translation of the Greek word ekklesia, this group of people who have been identified by someone else to represent them. And then they go and they gather together and they do the things they were told to do by those they represent. And it all begins with an idea. The idea that the people need representation. And then that idea develops. And I want to show you this development of the idea with a word like ekklesia, or a concept like the House of Representatives. Write these things down. It follows this order. It goes idea, and then people. Once you got the idea, you need to get the people in place. You have the idea of the House of Representatives. Now we need the representatives. We need the people who are going to serve in that. And then after you get the people, then you get them together. It's not good enough to just vote on people and have them get the title. You have to actually get them together. So they gather together. And then once they've gathered together and they begin to gather on a regular basis, now you need some organization to support it. You need secretaries, and you need, life insurance and health insurance and maybe some salaries. There needs to be some kind of organization to support this thing that you had the idea about long ago. And then eventually you may need a building. But how much of that could you really strip away and still have the House of Representatives? You can get rid of the building, right? And you can still have the House of Representatives. You don't need to have the building in order to have the House of Representatives. Even though when you're in Washington, D.C., you'll see the building that says Congress, and you might think that that refers to the building, but it's really what's going on inside the building. But you can get rid of the building and still have it. And in fact, you can get rid of the organization to a certain extent. You can get rid of the organization overhead all the way back until you reach the point of leadership, and then you can't cut it off anymore. Because if you lose the leadership, then the gatherings don't serve the purpose for which the people were called according to the original idea. So you can cut back the organization all the way until you get to the level of who is our leader, who are the leaders in this situation, but then you can't cut back any further. Because if you cut out the leaders, then the gatherings don't have purpose. If you cut out the gatherings, then the people aren't doing anything at all. If you cut out the people, then all you've got is a pipe dream. And if you cut out the idea, you got nothing. So if you want to have an ekklesia, you have to have an idea, you have to have the people, you have to have them gathered, you have to have leadership, and then you don't need this other stuff. Are you following me? This other stuff is support material, it's extra, it can help the thing work better, but it's not necessarily needed. And the same thing goes with the church. The church, you can cut back some things. We don't own a building. We're leasing an office space down there that we're trying desperately to pull together the funds and the resources and everything to actually fix that thing up. And we just finally got word 2 weeks ago that we don't need to jump through any hoops with the city. So we've been waiting this whole time to try to get this final word, and we finally got the word. Now we can begin doing some stuff over there. And so this Saturday, we've got the work day. Come on out there, please. Everybody, let's do that thing. But we don't really need a building. We don't really need a building of any sort. We don't need this thing. It's great, don't get me wrong. From the music standpoint, I think it's awesome. From being in this environment, this stage area, I think it's incredible. But to tell you the truth, we could meet at my house. Or we could meet in the park. Now, not all of us. We'd have to meet like in multiple sessions, or maybe a few of you wouldn't want to come to the park, and so this works a little bit better. But we don't need it. In order for us to be the church, it's not about the building, and it's not about all the organizational overhead. It's more important that we get the idea right, the people in place, the gathering happening, and we got our leadership squared away. And if you get those things, then you at least have the Greek word ekklesia. Okay? Now it's time for us to understand what Jesus means when he says, I'm going to build my church. And so I'm going to run through a bunch of blanks here for you. The first thing, the one true church that Jesus builds is built on the confession of Jesus as the Christ. You see, Peter says, Jesus, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Jesus says, you are Peter. Peter is the Greek word that means rock. He says, you are rock, and on this rock I will build my church. It's almost like if you said, you're rocky, and on this rock I will build my church. Does that mean that Peter's going to lay on the ground and Jesus is going to put a building on top of him? No. Does that mean that Peter is now the de facto head of all things church and everything must flow from Peter? No. It means that Peter symbolizes the exact thing that needs to happen. God speaks into a person's heart about the nature of who Jesus is, and then Jesus is flowing out of that person through that identity. So it's built on the confession of Jesus as the Christ. Number two, it's built by Jesus himself. The real church is not the work of human beings putting together something. You know, I can't even tell you how many times when I first moved to this town, I said, hey, I'm getting a new church started, and every person I talked to, first question was, where do you meet? Actually, half of the people said, where do you meet? The other half of the people said, oh, so are you building? It's like, I don't have $10. I can't build a building. You know, why should we bother with all that? Because the church is the people, the idea, the people, the gathering, and a little bit of leadership in order that we are all moving in forward in the same direction.